Hello, good morning, and welcome back to the Business Success Network podcast. We're on part 3 of our mini series special with Rachel Bennett from HR Fusion. And I very nearly got that wrong a minute ago. We were laughing backstage because I was going Fusion HR Fusion. I knew, when you just have a bit of a brain fart. Well, that was me today. So, welcome back, Rachel. You are here for the 3rd time. I am so excited to have you back.
Thank you very much for having me. And as per the other two, we did have IT issues again this morning. I think I might have sorted it now. So, on the 3rd podcast.
It's brilliant. And I'm glad we've powered through. We've got through the IT issues. And it just goes to show, doesn't it? To be a business owner, everyone has issues, hiccups, but we're here. We're good. And I always say, 90% is done is better than not doing it at all. So we are here. And you are somebody who quite openly says, to podcasts or, being on the cover of a magazine. And I keep throwing these things at you and you are just, you're grabbing the opportunities. So thank you for being here. In the first part, then, we talked about you and your journey through HR and all the way up to, director level and then starting your own business. And, that was such a brilliant in-depth episode. In episode 2, we looked at this shadow culture that you've come up with. And we looked at what is a shadow culture because, you hear quite a lot about company culture, but this shadow culture might be a new term to some people. So we talked about that. Now, this episode, this is where we're getting into the nitty gritty, I think, isn't it? We're going to talk about the second half of your book, which is all about that 6-step model for cultural change. So this is where the team leaders listening, the HR directors, people like that, they're going to kind of sit up and say, okay, what is this model? What is this? How am I going to get cultural change into my workplace? And you're here. You're going to tell us a bit about how that model came about, because obviously we could give them the model, but we want them to go out and buy the book because that's what's going to give them all the juicy details, the how-tos and all that kind of thing. So, Rachel, just let's start with then. How did you come up with this 6-step model?
Yeah. Okay. So, as I've alluded to in previous episodes, I've been in HR for quite a little time, 20 odd years plus. And over the period of time, I've kind of led and been part of loads of different change programs. Some have been brilliant, and some me and my team have been awarded, have been nominated for awards and shortlisted, etc. So we've had some really fantastic kind of results from some of them, but some of them never really got off the ground. Some of them got off the ground, but then kind of paused part way, or we ran out of money, or it took too much time, or so there was always things that kind of crept in. And so I'm a real note taker. So I've always taken notes on lessons learned and kind of looked and thought, okay, that didn't go quite so well. I don't know why, but I'm going to write it down because at some point I'm going to find out. I'm also a big book reader, and I have got notepads upon notepads of loads of different HR books, cultural books, project books, you name it, books. And I've got drawings. They're not very good, but I've got drawings in my real books of different models that I've seen across the years. And then I've kind of made my own notes and kind of thought, oh, okay, I like that model for this particular bit, but actually the rest of the model doesn't fit for me, etc. And then quite a few years ago, I was very privileged, actually, was able to do a qualification in the psychology of organisational development. So that is very much around learning how an organisation thinks, how it feels, how it acts. So almost trying to pretend it's a person, as it were, and then kind of really start understanding that, which ultimately for me is that cultural element and that organisational development and design. And through that particular course, had an amazing teacher who, interestingly, I'm not in contact anymore. And I really wish I could be, because I'd really like to thank them, because sometimes you just meet people along the way in your journey, don't you? And you're just like, oh, they're real nuggets of knowledge. And she taught us as a group a model that I think she'd created. And that model I then took back into my workplace and started playing with it with a few of my HR leaders. And we started playing with that into different projects and seeing how it would work. And so all of these things happened, all of the lessons learned. So I've kind of got this model, then I've got all my reading of other people's models, then I've got all my experience, successes and failures, etc. And then I left work, handed my notice in, and decided to set up HR Fusion. Had a real kind of period of really trying to work out what my niche was going to be. And clearly it was always going to be culture. But in order to really understand my niche, I kind of felt like I needed to put together all those different elements of the learning. So that kind of model learning, my notes, my experiences, etc., and put it together. And that's where the model came from, because I then was thinking, so for example, the model very much starts around kind of getting commitment from the right people. So, one of the things I've seen happen a lot is a project is needed, but not everybody that should be bought in is bought in. Sometimes it's because, we know that Mr. or Mrs. X or Y is not going to buy into it. Therefore, we kind of leave them out of it because we know they're going to be a problem. But actually, that's the wrong thing to do. You need to buy them in at the beginning. So I learned that from a course I was on where we talked about contracting, it was called. And so there's elements of lots of different courses and there's lots of different things. And like I say, I am a big note taker. So I've kind of put it
I'm
all
really
together.
pleased you said that, because my office is full of notebooks,
Yeah.
scribbled in, written in, and I do sit there sometimes and think I really should type these up and have like one big Bible, if you like.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but
And
there's
it's
something
worth
about
doing.
that written. There is something about that written. It just goes in better.
Yeah.
My husband does draw the line at the bookshelf where there's empty notebooks because they're too nice to write in, though.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. But I think for me, there's something quite therapeutic about, I think it's how I learn. I learn, I can read, but I think because I've always, I wouldn't say struggled as an adult now, but as a child, I always struggled. So I think to read and to write at the same time kind of gives me a double whammy because I can see
Mm.
it as I'm writing it. So I'm reading it and I'm writing it. And I sat last summer after I'd finished work, I sat in the garden with, I'm a fond lover of the A4, yeah, no, A5, the big notepads. So I sat in the garden with a huge notepad, just drawing. And that's how, so I drew everything out into different areas. And then I categorized the areas and kind of said, oh, all those words and all those drawings, actually, they mean this and they mean this. And that's kind of how the model kind of came out of my head. So yeah, I would never have been able to create the model without some fantastic books that I've read, some amazing teachers, some great colleagues that I've worked with that have helped me play with the model over the years, etc. But ultimately, I did sit for quite a few days playing and drawing and, sticky notes galore, etc. And writing the book was brilliant because it helped me go into the detail of every single element on the model, which was really good.
And I love the idea of this book. I love the fact that it's almost in, like you say, two parts, and you've got all your knowledge, but then, as you said, it's drawn. That whole process of writing the book has then
Mm.
given you this second half of the book, which is the model that people can follow, they
Yeah.
can, use. And I love the fact, I love that you've took other books, other inspiration, other models, because everybody has a different way of working. And you've looked at
Absolutely.
it and gone, oh,
Mm.
I like that. That doesn't
Yeah.
sit right.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I could improve that, because that's what business, isn't it? It's an improvement of all these different things and your own take on stuff. So I love it. And I love the fact that you just talked about, step one being the getting people in, because I think there'll be loads of listeners listening thinking,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, we've done that. We know that Joe Bloggs was never going to agree to
Absolutely.
this.
Yeah.
And actually, we see it quite a lot with, organizations, maybe councils, things like that, where they know
Mm.
there is going to be some backlash, or just some, yeah, just a bit of kind of, oh, no, it doesn't
Yeah.
sit right. Whereas actually, those conversations are going to happen at some point. They may have not
Absolutely.
started at the
Yeah.
beginning. So.
Absolutely, and that's why I've kind of, started that model, and there's a little story in the book around, I went on a management leadership training course, which was brilliant, and there's part of the learning of that is sort of, it's all sewn in all of this in some way, shape or form. But we, on one particular day, we all sat down in a circle, which is always really uncomfortable because you're kind of open to the world, aren't you? And
Yeah.
the person taking the course said to us, right, do you all understand what the word confidentiality means? And we're like, yeah, of course we do. Yeah, we know what we're doing. We can go with this. So she said, okay, agree on what it means. I kid you not, it took half a day. And at that point, the lady facilitating it was, yeah, okay, let's just stop now. The point's been made. And the point was every single person in that room had a slightly different take on what the word confidentiality meant. For me, I'm a HR person, so I was very clear on it. But then when you speak to somebody else, oh, okay. So when is confidentiality? If somebody's given you something that means that somebody else's life is at risk, for example, is that word, is that still a confidential conversation? And so it's things like that has helped me form a lot of the book, because a lot of the model, should I say, because it is those sort of, right at the beginning of a project, you can be commissioned to do a certain project, but you need to go back and confirm what people mean by that. So, if you are asked to do, make an organization high performing, just like that, what does high performing mean to that organization? Because actually your interpretation of it might be slightly different. So in the model, there's parts through the model which is very much around, really get into the nitty gritty of this kind of, what is it you want me to do? How do we work that out, and who needs to be involved, who needs to be engaged, are you committed from day one, yes or no? And working all of that out, because I have seen it so many times where, I love the term mood hoovers.
Yes, I've used that a lot. Yeah.
So you could have a group of 6 people on a project, but if you've got a mood hoover in the room, you really need to be identifying who that person is, and then understanding what it is that they're not happy about, because there's usually something simple in there. And so the model is very much around that collaborative commitment and working together, etc. Yeah.
Amazing. So, we've talked about how leaders, they will want to read your book. They will want, they come across your model. They want to start implementing this cultural change within
Mm.
their workplace. What message or what guidance would you give them um, to make those positive changes within their organizations?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it is starting where I've just started. So it's very much about, really clarifying what it is that's wanted. I have seen so many times where people say, for example, I don't know, let's pick on one. We've got a sickness issue. So there's an organizational issue and the sickness levels are too high. So we're gonna, I don't know, decrease the sickness allowance for all staff. Well, my part there is, and actually no, stop, let's do a root cause analysis, let's look at where the sickness issues are, what is, because often by going into it, and this is also in the model, but going into that root cause of what the issue is, and then feeding back to those people that you've kind of had that conversation with and confirmed this is what the project is, you can then go away and say, I know you've just told me that the problem is a global sickness problem and that you want the solution to be X, but actually we've now gone away, we've used the model and the tools within the model, we've now got the real reason, and actually it's a such and such a department, and it's because they've got a project on which such and such, or whatever the reason is, but there's a reason over there that's actually skewing the sickness figures for the whole company rather than just for that. So it's really about that kind of following that model all the way through. So making sure that you've got that clear message at the beginning of what it is they want you to try, get them on board, get their buy-in, get their commitment, then go away, do your research, do the root cause analysis, really investigate what they think the problem is, because that's their hypotheses. So take their hypotheses, have a look at it, do the root cause, and then go back again. And that again in that model is that around that kind of feedback loop, and making sure that, they're saying this one thing, you're now investigated to go back to them, have another conversation and say, this is what we're finding. So there's a lot of that there.
And I'm guessing, if you're at the top of a company, you're just getting very much the facts and figures. This is the sick problem. It's this
Mhm.
percentage. We need to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
like you say, there will be, global things that they hear about. But I'm guessing by using your model, as you've just said, and in that example, oh, we found that it's one department, and actually it's
mm,
because of this,
yeah,
then will allow that organization to deal with that much quicker and
yeah,
much more at an individual or department level,
yeah,
rather than,
absolutely.
like you said, cutting benefits for the whole
Yeah,
company
absolutely.
that wasn't needed and could create some animosity at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I probably should say is the model I've created, I would imagine most people that are reading it, the audience that I'm aiming at, which is leaders, HR professionals, will know everything in this book. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure at some point they've come across it. But what I've tried to do is put it all together so that it all flows and it makes sense and it's in a logical order. And, I have read and gone through lots of different models. Some fit, some don't. What I've tried to do is make this model that is really practical, that kind of helps us or the reader kind of go from step 1 all the way through to step 6 in a logical fashion that works in the day job. And there will obviously be stuff in there, I hope, that people are going to learn, but the actual way through it, that the professionals that are going to be reading it will know some of this stuff, and they will, even if they don't know the detail, they're going to know, oh yeah, I know what a root cause
But
analysis
I
is,
think that's
how to do it, and that's what the book will do, is guide them into the detail.
That's a really good book though, and it's a really good training, and it's a really good event,
Mm,
anything like that, those things where people go to learn.
yeah.
Actually, if you're reading something and you've already heard bits or from
Yes.
another HR professional
Yeah.
or from, another expert in that field, actually, for me, it's like a
Yeah.
safety net. You kind of know, well,
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
if more than one person is doing this, is talking about
Absolutely.
it, oh,
Yeah.
I've heard about that, but Rachel's,
Yes. Yes.
expanding
Absolutely.
my knowledge on that.
Yeah.
That is exactly what a book should be.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And that's really important to me. And I know that the person who was my manager a long time ago, and he's written the foreword for me, that's why he wanted to write the foreword, because he said to me, it's a book in plain English and it's a book that's been written through experience. I haven't just got the models and then put something together. I have gone through the pain myself. So I have gone through those meetings where I've set up a project and then haven't talked to somebody because they're a bit scary or they're not going to be on board. And then that's derailed my project later on. So I've been there and done it. So the model itself is an amalgamation of all of these things. But my hope is that a HR professional or a leader will look at this and feel comfortable. I don't want them to feel like, oh gosh, I don't know what she's going on about, and now I need to go and get another book to research what this word meant, etc. I've written it in a way that there will be a lot of familiarity in some of the words and some of the things that I'm saying, but it's put together. It creates a really good kind of blueprint for people to be able to follow, to get that cultural change thereafter.
And we've touched on your experiences in the last couple of episodes. We've touched on the fact that HR can be very reactive.
Yeah,
Whether you are a HR consultant going into businesses or whether you are a HR, employed member of the team,
yeah,
uh, both can be very reactive. What the book will help with is being a bit more proactive and having these things in place
mm,
identified
yeah,
so that HR isn't as stressful. We've kind of touched on it a bit that HR is or can be a very stressful
mm,
industry, not
mhm,
just for the HR person, but for the people involved, for the
absolutely.
team, for the leaders. It can be very stressful,
Mhm,
and we've talked about people leaving HR and, setting up businesses or changing industries. And actually, this book kind of puts all that together, and it's almost like an arm around their shoulder and says, look,
mhm,
this is a shadow culture. And
yeah,
actually, most organizations have them. I, as a non HR person,
mhm,
we've had conversations and I've gone, oh, I can see that in this organization
yeah,
or in that
yeah,
organization. So I
absolutely.
think for HR person to say, no, we've not got any shadow cultures, I
Yeah.
think that might be a bit naive. There possibly might be some.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that everybody grabs this book and thinks, let's just see what it's about.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but if you are that person, so you're, this HR leader, or you are a director, or you're the CEO of a company, or you run a small business with a small team of people, and you're
Yeah.
thinking, I want to be the best leader I can be.
Yeah.
What are the critical considerations then for them to keep in their mind?
There's loads. I think the first thing I'd say is probably buy the book. Because I think the critical considerations for me is very much about people. And for me, what I'm trying to do here is look at that cultural element. So this model has obviously been designed to try and eliminate the shadow culture, but it can also be used, for you. If you've even got a high performing organization and you want to put a change program in, you can use use it for that as well. So I think planning, people, the model itself, without going into the physical model, it's harder to explain, but the 6-stage model will take you all the way through that kind of making sure that you're building the relationships, making sure that you've got the commitment, making sure that you've got that feedback loop, making sure that you know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, because quite often we go to the end and we come up with the kind of the interventions before we know what the problem is. So it's kind of following that through and saying, okay, let's do that root cause, let's find out what the intervention is, and then analyzing that data, taking it way through. The big thing for me is the feedback. So we talk about communication, that's massive, the relationship's massive, feedback is huge, because a lot of the time, a lot of change projects don't go so well because we send out questionnaires on things like best companies, for example. Everybody fills them in, or lots of people fill them in, and then we don't feedback. Particularly, we don't feedback the not so great results. We maybe feedback the brilliant results because that's brilliant, but actually people are not stupid,
Well, you can
and they
learn so much from feedback, and actually even the negative feedback is
yeah,
a chance to
it
change.
is. And people are not stupid. So if they know that, massive amount of people have put feedback in of X, Y, and Z, the feedback they're getting is all positive, they're going to go, okay, now I don't trust the organization. So then there's a trust issue in that culture and different things. So it is our honest feedback. And then right towards the end of that model, which is also critical. So I would say all 6 steps are critical. The last one is about celebrating success. And I think that one is so often missed. And it's sometimes because we don't know how to celebrate success. Sometimes it's, we want to do this massive big thing and then there's no budget for it, or we haven't got the time for it. But, sometimes it is just kind of, I don't know, saying thank you and having a follow-up meeting when the project's finished, maybe a month after the project's finished, have a follow-up meeting and, and do something there, or even get the CEO to come in and say thank you. And so it doesn't have to be a great big grand thing, but quite often I've seen it and I've done it myself where we then straight on to the next project and we haven't got time to finish this one. So yeah, there's loads of critical factors in it. I will also say as well, a little bit cheeky plug I suppose, but the model itself is now being created into a training program as well, which will come out probably February time next year. So people can either buy the book or they can give me a call and we can do one-to-one mentoring and we can go through all this together and tailor that, or they can look for the program, which will be a 6-stage program, like I say, which will come out next year. So there's lots of ways that we can move this, and I've tried to do it where the book is the cheapest way of doing it for somebody, but if they like it and they want to improve, then there are some other ways of doing that as well.
That's brilliant. That's amazing. And that was going to be the next thing I was going to ask you. Is what comes after the book?
Yeah.
Because often I speak to people and they say, right, I've written one book, I'm never writing another, and then another book is kind of in the pipeline. But watching you through this process, and it's been fascinating to see, because we started talking, well, we've known each other for years, but we started talking when you were writing the book. You've gone off to the retreat, you've come back, you surprised me in the second episode with the book. That was
absolutely
brilliant. I love that. And as we've talked, it's just been such a natural step. Oh, look, there it is again.
I take it with me everywhere I go now.
Good, good. Absolutely. You should be having photos with it everywhere. Um, but it's been a natural step. You know, I speak to some business owners and they'll say, right, I'm writing a book and then I'm going to set up my funnel page and I'm going to have my free download and then it's going to be a course. And they've kind of got the steps and it feels a little bit clunky because it's almost
Mm,
like that's what they feel they should be doing. Whereas with you, it's been completely natural. And, you
mm,
know, you said, oh, yeah, I knew I was going to do a course, but I thought that was going to be kind of next year. But actually,
yeah,
it's just happened and flowed, and
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
incredible. And you know you've got great content to share when it happens like that.
Yeah, and I think, it's an interesting one. And if you go back to the first one episode we did, you'll know a bit more about me. But bringing that to this one, when I was writing the book, because I had that kind of anxiety of, is this good enough? Can I do this? All of the things that I'm sure it's not just me, I'm sure there was lots of people. And in order to help me with that, what I did, which was a bit strange, but actually worked out brilliant. So I'd advise any author to do this, is I wrote a training manual at the same time as writing the book, because on the 6 stage model, this is because it was better, like I say, with all the drawing and putting all the visuals together and stuff, I was then able to kind of say, okay, so this is what I'm talking about here. How would I teach that? Or how, and so in order to, so I would then create the training manual and then go back into the book. And so I flipped between the two. So when I got my first draft of the book, I also had a first draft of a training manual. And that was partly on purpose, but it was predominantly because I am and was so passionate about making sure that the reader gets the full experience and they get the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth type thing through my book. And in order to do that, I had to challenge myself that I knew what I was talking about. So that is why my training program is coming quite quickly after the book, because it's already there, and I've got a fantastic company that's helping create that program as well. So yeah, so anybody that's writing a book, if there is a methodology in it, write your training manual at the same time, because it will save you time, and it helps embed it all as well.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. I almost want to. I just, yeah, I love it. When we started talking about this whole shadow culture, and I was like, oh, come and be one of the Business Success Network experts. You know, come and be our culture expert, because when you build communities, when you build an organization, when you work with people, when
Mm,
you lead people, you have to be a people person, and I
mm,
love it. The best part of my job is this stuff. It's the
yeah,
talking, it's the getting to know people.
yeah,
I always say all the time, I built my business with a cup of coffee, because I'd be like, yeah, let's meet for a coffee. Let's have go to a networking event. Have you got 5 minutes after for a coffee? Even though we've spent 2 hours having coffee and chatting. Um, and it's just a really lovely way of doing business. However, if somebody said to me, or if I felt, and there have been times where I've been organizations where, you feel there is a shadow, or there is
mm,
something that you just can't put your finger on, or like
yeah,
you say, you want to feel like you are the best leader in the world, but
yes,
we've all got different things that we might
yes,
pick up on, or that don't, that you think are going to work and they don't.
yeah,
And so this book for me, it really is kind of an eye-opening beginning into that journey of, okay, let's have a
mhm,
look at what this company culture
yeah,
actually means. Um,
absolutely.
to that leader, but
Mm.
also to the team, because I bet they have very different views on
Totally.
an organization.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, in the book, we talk about different cultures, and, you know, you can then take the cultures down into like almost nano cultures, because you can have different teams in different geographical locations. They've all got different cultures, and then those cultures come together. What culture does that create, etc.? And so what I've tried to do is, the first half of the book is very much about, for me, there is a shadow. There is this kind of, this is what people are saying, but this is what people are doing. And what's that bit in the middle? To me, that's now called a shadow. And all that is done is just help me and people put that in your mind, so that you've almost got a name for it. Because when we can name something, sometimes it becomes a bit more real, doesn't it? So whereas before I was, well, there's something there, I don't know how to explain it. You just feel it, you just know, you feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable, or you feel happy, or and I think I describe it in the book as around, it's like buying a house. When you go through the front door, there's a difference. You get a feeling. You're either in your home, your future home, and you're like, oh yeah, this feels right, or you're like, no, it's lovely, but it's just a house.
Yeah.
And that is how I would explain this kind of this bit in the middle. And I think when it's that, when you feel it doesn't feel right, that's your shadow. So what I'm trying to do is just name it with a name, because then once it's got a name, you can then start addressing it and kind of go, okay, is that a really big issue, or is it just a smaller issue? And then the model either helps you diagnose the shadow, so you can use it to kind of go, okay, we think we've got a shadow issue, well then use the model to help you diagnose the shadow, and then it will help you with the interventions of how you get rid of the shadow. Or you can turn around and say, actually, we've not really got a major issue with the shadow, but we want to be more of a well-being organization rather than, I don't know, a digital organization, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be. So then you can use the model to say, okay, we want to be more digital, we want to be more well-being. That's when you then go to your leadership and sit with them and say, so what does well-being mean to us? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And have those conversations. Then go away, do all your analysis, do your root cause on it, work out where the problems are. If there are any problems, then go back to the group of people. And that's where the process starts. And then you kind of follow that process through to the end, where you get some great results, hopefully, and definitely celebrate the success.
And
And then
I
then
love that you say about celebrated success,
Mhm.
because that is, like you said, it's the one piece of the puzzle that people do not focus on.
Mhm.
We are human. We
Yeah,
tend to focus on what we didn't achieve rather than what we did achieve.
yeah,
And like you said, in busy organizations, they whiz through. It's like tick, done, what's next?
yeah,
Especially for different departments and things.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm really chuffed that you've got that
Yeah,
in your
it's
system.
definitely there. And there's some case studies in the book, which they're my interpretation of businesses. So I want to be very clear on that. And I have put that in the book because I'm only one person. So I have gone and done all my research on
Mhm.
places like John Lewis, for example, and then use John Lewis as a case study for different types of cultures. So there are some fantastic organizations out there that are doing this brilliantly. So let's pinch some of the ideas they're doing, and some of the and a lot of the ones that are successful are the ones that are celebrating the successes. And for me, it is about putting people first. And if we put our people first, then actually they're happier, they're motivated, they're engaged, etc. And actually the businesses will start to thrive. That's my personal opinion, but I am a HR and OD person, so
Yeah,
that's where I'm going to
I agree totally. I know I perform better in their weeks. Like you said, it doesn't have to be a big party, celebration,
Mm,
meal out, whatever it is. It can sometimes just be somebody in the team or in the management team recognizing a job well done and
yeah,
saying, thanks for today. It
indeed.
can be that simple.
Yeah,
Or we know you've had a real tough one today.
yeah,
It's not gone unnoticed. Just
absolutely.
knowing that they're watching and that they're
Yeah,
seeing what you're experiencing can be
absolutely.
really, it
Yeah,
can just change your whole being, like you say.
absolutely. And that's why I give that caveat that a lot of HR and leaders that are watching this or read the book, or whichever source they find the model through, this is why I say they know this stuff. They're probably doing a lot of this. I'm just putting it as a reminder, because I have seen it, myself included, where we've perhaps forgotten and jumped onto the next thing. So that's why that's an example of, some of these people are already doing this and doing a great job, but let's do more of it. Let's do more.
We said we were going to talk for around 30 minutes. We are on the 35-minute mark. So I am just going to ask you one final question. I tend to ask it everybody, and I am springing this on you, so I apologize. But I'd love a top tip from you. So it could be anything business related. I'm guessing it's going to be cultural, shadow, HR
Yeah.
related, but it doesn't have to be. But what would to your audience listening now, what would your top business tip be?
Oh, a top business tip. Gosh, that's a difficult one because I've got so many. My brain is like, oh, I'll do this. And I think if I'd had time to reflect, I'd probably come up with something different. But off the top of my head, my top business tip has got to be that connection. It's got to be, talk about what the issue is. Don't just merrily go, oh, this is what we think the issue is, and then let's solve it. Talk about it and do that root cause, and don't go off a tangent, because I see it so many times. And like I say, I'm not judging people. I've done it myself, which is why I'm writing about it. But the top tip has got to be, really understand what the problem is you're trying to solve before you start trying to solve it. There you go. Off
Amazing.
the top of my head, that one was.
And that's why I asked. That's why I throw it on you, because I knew otherwise you'd have prepped and planned and everything.
Yeah.
So
You'd have got an answer at me.
never off the top of the thing. Just go for it. Right, Rachel. We've talked about the book. We've talked about the online platform coming soon. There's so much going on. Where can people find you?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn under Rachel Bennett. HR Fusion Limited is also on LinkedIn. And my email address and my web address is obviously www.hr-fusion.com, and you'll find my details on there as well.
And I'm guessing they'll be able to find all the details of the up and coming book ready for launch.
Indeed. Well, hopefully, I've just been told yesterday, it looks like it's going to launch on the 30th of November. So hopefully, yeah, it's a watch this space. So it's really exciting and really scary at the same time, because I think when you've put your heart and soul into something, I really want people to get the value out of it as to why I've created it. But I will leave it on the note that my granddaughter came over the other day and she said to me, "Grandma, my dad says you've written a book." And I said, "Yes." She said, "Can I see it?" And then she's only 6. And so she got the book, she sat on my lap. I kid you not, she read half a page, which was phenomenal for me. I was kind of like, oh my life, definitely not my genes. She read half a page, she closed it, she looked at me and smiled, and she went, "I think I'm going to write a book, Grandma." And I was just like, do you know what? If nothing else, my job is done.
You've
I've
inspired.
inspired my granddaughter to be an author, if that's what she wants to be. So I just thought these are the wins you've got to pick up and the celebrations along the way. So yeah, she melted my little heart. She did.
Oh, well, I can't wait to see a photo of you and your granddaughter reading that book together.
Absolutely.
It's just going to be gorgeous. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for being our first ever guest that has come along and done a 3-part we've done mini series before, but we've never
Yeah.
had it focused on one person and one business or book. So this
Brilliant.
is how excited I was about it. So thank you very much
You're very welcome.
contributing to the podcast, for sharing your wisdom with us, and for being one of our experts. So
thank you so much for having me. It's actually not been as painful as I thought it was going to be. So thank you.
There you go, folks. You heard it here first. I am not actually that painful to my guests. We are so excited to bring this podcast to you. If you are not yet in our Facebook community, please head over to the Business Success Network UK. You can find myself over there, you can find Rachel over there, and you can find a lot of other small businesses that want to champion and cheerlead you, offer you top tips, and basically just do business with each other. That's what we're all about. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon.